What is up, everybody? It is your boy, the Apologist, and we are live with another episode of Theological Discussion, and I am your host. Wait, I just said it earlier. RC Apologist. Sorry, brain is slipping, messing around, and as you can tell, if you can hear the lyrics in the background, that is the song A Mighty Fortress Is Our God, the rock and roll version that was made by Tim Beauchamp for the Dividing Line. But this isn't the Dividing Line with James White, because I'm RC Apologist. And with us, we are going to have our co-host as usual. It is Ave Nova, the candy corn, sugar corn, doggo.
Well, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's having a fantastic night. I'm looking forward to an incredible show, as usual.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, we are going to lower the volume on this because we're going to explain what the whole dealio is about for today. We decided to have an interesting episode, an interesting podcast. We've had a good deal of some guests on here. In fact, if y'all were here last week, y'all saw we had the historian Rachel Fulton Brown on, and that got a lot of people that came, but it doesn't look like the numbers are looking that much at the point. We're at 5 so far, but who knows? The numbers could get bigger. And you want to know how? You see that share button in the video? Go ahead, put the share button on and just share out that video. Share it to your friends, share it to your family, share it to your dog. I don't know, do dogs use iPhones these days?
I do. I don't use iPhones, but I have my iPad, so I am a good boy.
You are a good boy. You deserve good boy pets, and we will give you those after the show. And so, share the link out, and feel free to smash that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe. So make sure we keep this going, and we'll do this every single Thursday for the Theological Discussion podcast to bring you a new topic and a new discussion. But on to today, we are going to be discussing an interesting topic, and we have the graphic changed here to showing the title is A Theological Discussion with a Theistic Satanist. Now, some people have obviously been familiar with the notions of Satanism and the concept of Satanism. They've heard it either in the news, during the satanic scare panic that happened during the early period of the 20th century. Oh, not early. It would have been the late period of the 20th century. But you had a lot of people that are familiar with it, and we, of course, know the usual things. We know about the satanic temple statues that have been built to endorse the idea of equality of religious freedom and freedom of speech purposes. And then you, of course, have Anton, the very beginning of one of these aspects, which is of Anton LaVey.
Yes.
Jinx, you owe me a soda, by the way. And you have like Anton LaVey. But then, of course, I found out there have been other groups that have formed, including from branching out after and from within Anton LaVey's satanic temple group. So we see that the Church of Satan has its group, and then, of course, there was the Temple of Set, and then there was a couple other people that had their thing. So we have a very diverse group, and some of which includes the theistic aspect, meaning people who are Satanists, but they aren't atheistic Satanists, as is the majority of the aspect, but it's basically a minority of belief where it shows that they affirm indeed the existence of Satan, but of course might affirm other things depending on who you ask. My friends, that is what we are going to be answering the question of. And so without further ado, we present to you a real life friend of mine. She will be, of course, calling me by RC Apologist, and I will, of course, be calling her by the name she had preferred to go with on the program here tonight. And that name that we are going with is none other than the ultimate, the epic, the excellent. And by the way, that picture you see in the on the live stream feed is indeed a drawing that she did, just to let everyone know that this is not copyright infringement. I had permission to use this photo. It is the wonderful Skye with a E. Skye, welcome to the show.
Hello, nice to be on here. I am a little nervous, so I've never done something like this before, so it's just gonna be weird at first, and I might stumble on my words because of my anxiety. So yeah.
Well, I
Oh no,
understand.
don't worry at all. Actually, Skye, I didn't even know that you made your own drawing for your icon. I
Oh,
didn't either.
yeah,
She's very
I do
talented.
a lot
Amazing
of
job with
art,
that.
so
That's amazing. Yeah,
thank
great
you.
job with that.
You gonna try to ask for a commission there, Abe?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But
Ma-
yeah,
you
just
could
think
use
it's
your
very good
stimulus
job.
check on that one. At least that's what some furries have been using these days.
So
Well,
yeah,
my icon was meant for Borderlands. That's actually a siren that I made for that universe in general.
Nice.
oh, right on, right on. Yeah, Skye, I have so many questions. Um, God, oh my goodness, there's so much to talk about.
And we'll get.
Garcia, would you like to
we'll
start?
get. Yes, sure. And I just want to, as she said earlier, be sure not to be disrespectful or anything. We've already had to make that a policy. Where don't be rude, don't be mean, otherwise you're gonna get put a 300-second timeout, and if it gets further, we're gonna have to ban you. So I'm pretty sure if y'all know those rules from the previous shows, y'all can try to be somewhat respectful regardless. Okay, so we're having a conversation to learn and engage in some critical thinking, and again, a lot of people, they say let's look up Islam and understand, but not a lot of people know certain different beliefs and ideas that are out there, and how will you know even to understand the person or even witness to them unless you know what they believe? This is something that I feel is a problem with a lot of people, is that they don't want to take the time to get to know what exactly it is this idea is, what this belief is. And so theistic Satanism is not something you hear a lot these days. So we're going to have a conversation, we're going to get everyone introduced, and if y'all have questions, be sure to hold on to those and get ready to type them in, because during the second hour, which will be about 15 minutes from now, we will take your questions for her to answer. And I may interject in and get in something so that way we spark up more of the conversation. But again, submit your questions during the second portion, second half hour, I can't time. Okay, first hour, we're talking. Second hour, you ask questions. All right, so there we go. Glad we understand, folks. So that being said,
All right.
See, I'm stumbling on my words, and I'm the host that's been doing this for years.
Nah, dude, you're fine.
All right.
I'm supposed to be stumbling over my words.
Well, there you go. That should increase your confidence right about there.
Oh, well, right about there. All right.
Right about there. You can tell I'm Southern right just there. All right,
That
so
there, Neeler.
this is like the most fun we've had regarding it, guys. Like, I'm laughing like crazy than ever on the show. So, first question is, and I think this would be the main one that goes to everyone's mind whenever they hear about this. What convinced you to take the theistic aspect of Satanism? Because a lot of people can understand the Anton LaVey Satanism that was there, but then you had other people that chose the theistic aspect, including I think it was Michael Guino, who was one of the original priests of the Church of Satan, who went the theistic route. What made you or convince you to go down that particular route in your walk there?
Well, it's because of when I first looked into it, and I'm not saying that I'm a professional in any sort of way or fashion on what spiritual Satanism is in all concepts and how people choose to believe it, but how I got into it was because, how I was convinced for myself, I convinced myself to be into it, because that's more of a choice for yourself to go into something like that, how it's like a choice for anybody to be in a certain religion, and that's like a commitment. It was more for the self-development that it brings for me in general, and what I had looked into and saw, and reading more into it, it had explained that Satan himself is like an encouragement to be yourself and to love yourself and be different and not be something that you're not, in a sense. And that's what I really was drawn to mostly for it. The it just felt more equal in a sense, and I guess less restrictive, if that's a better way of putting it.
No, it does. It absolutely does, and that really does sound like a Anton LaVeyan type of ideology to like grasp onto. And I get it. The whole idea of his philosophy is that you are your own temple. That worship yourself as God. Now, I don't necessarily believe in that, but I understand the concept of it. That we as humans are not divine, but we are made in divine image. So do you think, Skye, that Anton LaVey's philosophy influenced you in your belief? But do you actually believe that Lucifer, the fallen angel, is actually a god?
I say yes and no. My yes side of it is that in his writings, from what I have looked into and everything, dealt with a lot of magics, and I have some of this written down so I wouldn't lose track of what I should be saying. But magics and how do I put it? And Satan himself being viewed as a positive figure more than a negative figure that has been portrayed through Christianity throughout the years. Like I said earlier, of being oneself and embracing your own life instead of following something else. But from what I do read from it, it's too much for me and this is the no side of it. It's too much for me of a I don't believe people
what, like free-willed? I mean, yeah, I would agree with that also.
Oh, no, here we go. I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep up everything, but my brain goes different ways. It makes it seem like that people shouldn't be able to praise what they want to praise. Like how it kind of writes itself as people are sheeple for believing in the Christianity or Judaism and whatnot. And that was a little bit of a part of it that I didn't really agree with. For me and my Satanist beliefs is that we have no right to judge what other people should believe in. And that what they view is right is what we will consider right. And for me, I believe in what I believe. Unlike in LaVey's ways, it just sounds to me more of a I'm right, you're wrong, you're just sheeple, and you're following the shepherd.
Which seemed to be one
totally
of his one of his things I noticed during the later half of his life. And there's even some rare in color footage of him doing certain segments where he's answering certain questions, and explaining why he doesn't really do much live interviews is because when he did used to go on them, he would just get made fun of constantly, and he had a very negative outlook every single time he spoke on something like that. It sort of reminded me of a Christopher Hitchens sort of snarkiness that came about him whenever he would comment on Christianity, Judaism, or any of the other things that were out there. So he definitely had a big negative outlook out there. And here's a question I want to ask, and this comes from the Gospel Coalition in their article entitled 9 Things You Should Know About Modern Satanism, and I want to get what your take is, because number 2 says, dealing with Theistic Satanism in particular, quote, believe Satan is one of a group of oh great, now I'm gonna look stupid. suprapersonal, I don't even know, what is supra? Someone in the live chat, please help me. Suprapersonal dark forces capable of having some control or influence over human beings and who venerate, worship, or align with him. A prime example is the Order of the Nine Angels, an occult group created in the 1960s in the UK, whose members strive to become one with Satan and other dark forces and seek, quote, to create new, more highly evolved individuals. Even within occultism, theistic Satanists are extremely rare. Researchers estimate their global numbers to be in the low thousands. So, would you say that this summarizes a bit your aspect, or do you think that there's a little bit more exclusivity and something that makes your beliefs unique, if you will?
I do believe that there are negative forces out there. There are spirits, there are demons, there are deities, there are gods, and I don't believe in dealing with negative entities to gain a godhood, as how it sounds. And that's where it kind of goes into the pagan and Wiccan side of theistic Satanism. We do use magics. We do use like tarot, runes, dowsing rods, pray. I guess you would consider prayer, or somewhat of that. It's hard to describe. Like I said, I'm not a professional in this at all. This is only my accounts of what I know and what I do each and every day. But I think my views and what I do are completely different from what they do, because I don't like to dabble in those evil kinds, because that just leads to horrible sickness for yourself or others, like hexes and curses and whatnot. And then just everything collapses before you, and it just never really leads to anything good. Granted that even dealing with deities and gods themselves, they can also be draining to the spirit. You have a aura or a force around you that can just as easily, if not well versed in how much you know can be taken, will make you feel tired or depressed or sick every day, and it's just not a good side to be on the bad or go into it unknowingly and unprepared. If that makes sense.
No, it totally does.
I hope that answered it too, because sometimes I do go on rambles where it doesn't necessarily.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine.
You should hear me on some days. I ramble quite often on this show.
No, it's okay. I was just wondering about the evilness aspect to it. When you said people in this field, they do rituals and prayers and whatnot. Are they praying to Jesus, our Lord and Savior, or are they, using these dark magics and whatnot to praying to evil gods or whatnot?
Are you meaning the spiritual Satanists?
Yes, I mean, why would someone like you, who knows about hexes and curses, like when they do these kind of things, what do you think that these people are praying to make these powers available to them? Are they praying to just some pagan false gods, or are they praying to Satan, or actually God, or what's going on there?
It really depends on which spectrum of Satanists that you go to. For me, it is more of, say, if I wanted to have a good family, I would pray to Hera. I would ask for her blessings and whatnot. Say if I was just looking for guidance in general, I would call to any deity itself to help me in what I need to do in my own life. And the evils that I would say that they would be talking to are actual bad deities. Well, not deities, but demons. Because demons are not something to really trifle with. They're no good. I wish I could explain it better, but
I absolutely, yeah, exactly. But then again, why would someone who, theistically believes that, Lucifer, the fallen angel, who, by the way, he did convince 1/3 of all of God's angels to follow him. This archangel, he was the right hand of God. He thought he was better, his whole greed and selfishness. But yeah, so he runs the underworld, and I just don't understand, like why would someone?
But
him?
isn't but wasn't that
He
she
makes bad
explained?
deals.
But wasn't that she explained earlier? Is that Christianity, or because I'm assuming you would get that from Christianity, and she's saying, I think that's what she was saying, is that the Christianity has sort of distorted the truth of who Satan is, or who Satan is. Am I correct in that, Skye?
Yes, in a way. That's for certain parts. That's what I believe, in a sense. Yes, that it's more distorted than anything, because in a view of it all, why wouldn't Satan be someone to have guidance from, to learn from, and to look up to as something that he was also an individual of knowledge and personality, instead of something that was this evil creature that wanted to make everything horrible.
That's a very interesting point you bring up. Especially if you look at the story of Adam and Eve and
Yes.
the tree of knowledge. It was Lucifer, in the form of a snake, who gave Eve the apple, to give her knowledge and realize that Adam and Eve were naked. So yeah, I get that, but there was probably a reason why God did not want them to know about that. So
I would prefer knowledge than being dumb and following something that I didn't know what I was walking into.
Fair enough. And
because it's
agreed.
It's scary not knowing what you run into, and it's scary to not be able. Why follow something that could easily be a trap and be dumb and blind to it, when I could learn and grow as a person and not be told what is the right way and what is the wrong way, when I can learn from my own mistakes.
Well, I think that everyone should do that, but of course you do have to learn from Jesus and his generosity and love for humankind, and what he's done, during his sacrifice to, for all of humanity. So I think you don't have to be forced to do anything or
no
anything.
It's more of what you choose to lead yourself to, like how I've chosen what I will lead myself to, and what you chose to lead yourself to. And that's the right way things should be. And a lot of people should, do the whole make your own mistakes and whatnot, but not many people know to do that. They rather force people to do things their way, or and then the blind following it as such, and they don't learn from it, and it hurts others in the process. And which we see a lot of that today.
Yeah. So here's the next question that I have, and we've talked about it before, and in fact you actually were the person who encouraged me and gave me the spark to start researching into this text, because I believe you said that you did indeed read it, and that it was part of your faith is the Satanic Bible. And with regards to the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey, do you view it as just wisdom or wise literature, or do you view it in the same way that the guy who would then leave the church, Church of Satan, to form the Temple of Set, Michael Aquino, would you be like him in affirming that there is some divine inspiration found within the pages of the Satanic Bible?
Just like in the previous question that was brought up earlier, dealing with LaVey and his works and how I felt upon them. That's a tough one, really, because you even find flaws in that in the set side of it, but If I had to choose between, I guess it would be more of a oh not why. Well, I mean, it would be wise words slightly. There's still the arrogance in LaVey that I don't appreciate.
Right.
Just some of his words just don't sound right to me in his works.
Mm-hmm. And I remember that was one of the things, because while I was doing my homework, I brought up one of them that was talking about death to the weak and strength to the strong kind of stuff, and you definitely seem to have some disagreements with that. But so you do think there's some things that, not just in his general works, but even in here, that may be sort of problematic.
Oh yes. See, at least in Set, I believe like there is divine beings, just not one divine being.
Right.
Yes, well, there are several, and they're called angels.
Ava, why did I know you were gonna do that?
Because I know all about divine beings. Yes, of course, there are definitely more than one.
I'm not doubting you. I mean, I didn't mean to insult you, but doubting your knowledge on that, my friend. Please forgive me, Duckle.
You didn't at all. It's all good. But yes, so I understand why some people would be, worshiping Satan, or as I call him, Lucifer, as it should be. But yes, he was a very prominent archangel, basically the right-hand man of God himself. But he thought he was better than God, and 1/3, think about that, 33% of all angels followed him, but they were all sent to hell. So I'm still trying to grasp my mind around why someone would worship someone like Lucifer, because yes, he was cast out of heaven. I mean, God is a jealous God. We know that from the Ten Commandments. But there is only one God. In my opinion. I'm sorry, Skye, if you think, I know there's different levels of divinity, of course, when it comes.
Oh no, I am not offended in any sort of way. This is supposed to be a discussion, and I'm not one to be like, oh, well, you're wrong and I'm right and I know what I'm talking about because I'm better than you.
Trust me, it takes a lot to offend her.
It takes way more than that to offend me.
I was just wondering, why would you worship a foreign angel? A fallen angel.
A foreign angel. Wow, we're getting a little racy here.
Well, technically, if you want to think about it, it is foreign to this world. It's the residing is in a different plane of spirit.
I meant fallen, okay?
Okay.
I meant okay. Well,
we get you. We understand you, Wave.
But
all right.
To kind of answer that, really, some people don't really believe in Christian Satan. Because as what apologists said, there's people, some of the Satanist society, the spiritual Satanist society, that believe that it is Inky and not Satan. And that's what also Joy of Satan is the same way. Like they call him Inky or Father, which I don't really believe you should be calling him Father, but whatever, that's just how they feel. And I have no, because that's where I also started, funny enough, was with Joy of Satan. Because I learned that, because you can't find any other places to look up this sort of thing, because it's very much blurred lines of, by the way, this was evil. Did you know they sacrificed babies at one point? This, that, and the other. But going off topic,
it's okay.
Because I do that sometimes. I am so sorry. Satan himself isn't really Satan in our eyes. For some, it's Satan in their eyes, but a lot of others are not. I wish there was a better way of explaining that, because this kind of thing is hard to explain, even though I've been in this for 5 years, and even
it's not hard to explain at all. I totally understand that I mean, Lucifer was an archangel who had
Well,
a crap ton of followers. I mean,
well,
obviously, people, really believed he was better than God. Some people
well,
did.
well, what she's saying is like there's people that had the conception, and then there's of course trying to explain what, because at least this is what I'm getting, is that, and this was not just with the Joy of Satan group that referred to, I believe it's Anki or Inky or how you pronounce the name.
It's Inky.
Inky.
It sounds like a name of a character for Splatoon, if you ask me. But I digress.
Okay, well, they
but
probably could have chosen a better name, but okay.
Well, this was in the ancient times. What are you going to expect? They didn't even know Splatoon was a game. But
the name is an actual meaning for some. I think it's for something of light.
Yeah.
Bearer of light.
Which then would be connected to the term that's been used, which is Lucifer, but then there's also
Set.
Exactly, which Set is the Egyptian god, which they get that as Set, which they claim, as far as my research goes, from James R. Lewis, who was a excellent scholar who researches Satanism. They basically affirm that Set was the original Satan, and then later on, then these things get added on, saying Satan, then Satan, and changing the pronunciation. At least that's what has been taught. That's what's been taught by Michael Aquino and the others who would establish the Temple of Set, and of which is one of the Satanist organizations that is still around to this day. I'm not sure if Michael is, because I don't think he's that old. All I know is that if you go look him up, whoa, those are some eyebrows on that dude. I'm talking like, I can imagine where people may start trying to make fun of him because he's got like eyebrows that kind of curl up like horns, which is strange. But yeah, like I can understand like where they're trying to come from, but at the same time, to me, it's also the same kind of thing I see whenever I see like the Zeitgeist movie that came out, where they tried to make a lot of things about how Easter or Jesus is actually connected to several different deities. Like the main one that's been said was about Horus, that Jesus was basically the evolved belief over time of Horus, even though there was no evidence to confirm this. Whenever Gerald Massey, who
that
promoted
was
the theory,
also like 3,600 BC. So
well, no, that's the point, is that they're trying to say
Horus is not Jesus.
Right, but
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right, but the point that they were trying to say is that originally it was Horus, and then they tried to evolve the story over that. Now, I of course don't believe it because there's no evidence to support the claim, and the guy who made the theory didn't even have couldn't even provide it in front of the scholars, and thus his theory was completely debunked and laughed out of the academic field. But then you have this thing, and like again I said, James R. Lewis is the only one I really know that really does any scholarly research into Satanism and the ideas that have come from the history thereof. So my idea is then regarding to this question is, in light of this, you have, I believe you mentioned one of the names of these different gods is there, and that would be these different kinds that are there. But in terms of the main one that we're trying to get down here, which is of the devil or Satan, or however you want to go by, what would you say is the name of this that you think is the most accurate in terms of an origin story, if you will? It sounds like a comic book already. An origin story of who Satan originally was, but then has been distorted later on in history. Who would you say is the candidate for that if you had to pick one?
I would probably, since, like I said earlier, I was first on Joy of Satan, they considered him Inky. I would have to go with that part, really. Because that was the first thing I was introduced to whenever I was dabbling a little bit. We called him Inky, and there are others that in the Christian society itself, like uh but Beelzebub. No, not Beelzebub, but yeah, I think it is Beelzebub. He is also a different god. He is not Satan himself.
Right.
There's Enki, there's Beelzebub, and then you have the other gods that go down the list of what, like Anders, Lilith. There are just many like gods and goddesses that are down there, but I go with Enki as being the one that I would really choose, since it was my first appearance to it.
Right, Skye. So, like, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. It seems like you're pretty polytheistic. Like you talk about different gods, like Hera, and ancient Egyptian gods,
Mm-hmm.
and people of that nature. Of course, Baphomet and Beelzebub. So, do you think that they're actually the creators of the world, or are they just fallen angels who are taking a hold on humanity? Like, are they actually gods, though?
I would consider them as such. I wouldn't say that they have taken hold of the world or the creators of the world.
There's statues of Baphomet being erected right now, like all over the place.
Which is an interesting thing to mention, because let's get Skye's take on that, because I don't know if that's the Church of Satan. I do know that's the Satanic Temple, which is from what I found out, apparently it's a totally different thing.
Right. So I'm wondering, like,
they made a
what's their
documentary
opinion on that. Like exactly. Like, do they think that Baphomet is a god or a fallen angel that follows Lucifer?
And what are your thoughts on the whole thing that they're doing about that?
On erecting the statues?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, do you? I don't know. Like, do people actually pray to these beings? Like, what do they do?
Well, how I feel about the statues being erected, I feel that that's their right.
Mm-hmm.
Just like how there is the statue of Jesus.
Right.
And then the many crosses that are around. Mm-hmm. I feel that is only fair, because that is also their belief. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't matter what it stands for. It's more of that is their religion, and they have every right to put out their religion and show others what they are, instead of being hidden and outcasted as some people, because we're like any other people on, like, walking around. And to be shunned and saying that we're just evil people, it's not right.
So you would say that the statues is not necessarily because they worship or that they necessarily worship these beings, but rather that it is a statement upon saying, like, because I assume this would go to like the First Amendment kind of thing, to make no law prohibiting the practice of free speech or to practice one's particular religion. Including certain monuments, if that's the case, because you have, like you said, statues that are made, crosses that are being placed out there, and even being sold in public places. And so the question then should be, why should Satanism be then excluded from this particular thing? So is it more so of a political and social kind of statement, or is there any actual, like, belief spiritual wise regarding the Baphomet statue in particular, because that being one of the characters towards Baphomet? Is there any particular beliefs that is then fueled into that?
It really, like earlier, it depends on which side of the Satanist spectrum. Well, yeah, I guess that's the right word to put it, spectrum, because with LaVey, they don't believe that there are gods. It's just a person. Like, it's you are empowering yourself, and that there is no other beings whatsoever that are worth of praise and whatnot. And, the Baphomet itself is a symbol of their religion, but it also could be like for me that Baphomet is a god that we will ask for guidance. I wouldn't say pray, but more like whenever I bring up prayer a lot, it's more of when springtime comes, and that is for Ishtar.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
The springtime, the world is going through rebirth. That's kind of like the prayers that I mean, like the prayers of we ask for, a good harvest, let's say that, or
right, yeah, of course.
Having like goals to achieve during a time of rebirth, or even during the time of another pagan God, why am I another pagan time, like during Christmas, when it will become a new year, and then we pray for things such as what we want to gain in this life for this year, instead of something like a goal of it's but going back to
No, you're good. You're good.
No, yeah, I understand.
My brain
it's
is not
definitely about the
Girl,
praise for...
your brain is your brain. Just
trust me.
Just relax. You're chill here.
I'm just trying to explain it better to where, because I understand that you keep coming up towards prayer parts and what gods do you pray to? It's like, well,
maybe that was the wrong way to phrase the question. I guess I was talking about different type of divine beings. Unfortunately,
okay,
are demons.
Okay, now I get it.
Well, I mean, like I
well,
said,
don't think I was like
a third.
Yeah.
No, you're good. But like I said, a third of all of the high angels of heaven, all of them, like they all followed Lucifer and they became demons and pagan gods essentially. And from what it sounds like, that you might be following these pagan gods, and in retrospect, they're actually just fallen angels. They might just be demons. Servants of Lucifer who are just pretending to be godly, and they influence humankind.
And it could be, but I say that that's something that we really don't know. But I believe that but I do have a belief that there are many beings instead of one. That's
right.
what makes the whole world come together as one.
Right.
But
and they're definitely still divine too. Let's not take that term lightly.
Right.
When it comes to even demons, they used to be angels. All right, so that's something very important to consider.
And so, and that is important to consider, and that's why I want to get to my last particular question. And by the way, we got about 15 minutes before we decide to turn the floors over for y'all to ask questions. So if y'all have questions, feel free to go ahead and start getting those ready so I can have those on hand to look at and ask our lovely guest here. And just also be sure to share the link to this if you haven't already shared it. And if you haven't, hit that like button. I see we've gotten 4 likes. Could use 4 more, however you want to do it. Just don't hit the down like. Every time you hit a dislike, I'm visited by the ghost of Elvis Presley mixed with Elton
don't
John.
talk bad about Elvis.
Oh,
Elvis
I'm not talking about I'm not talking bad about Elvis. I love Elvis, but however, it's strange when it's Elvis mixed with the voice of Elton John. It's like you're wanting to you expect one thing, and then it's like you're met with something completely different. If I see Elvis, I want to hear some Elvis. Not that Elton John is any bad, but that being said.
And sorry if I don't complete answering a certain question. Sometimes I go on tangents.
Oh no, that's okay. You're fine. And that's what's this, because my last one is gonna kind of get us slightly on tangents or discussions, in other words, at this point, is the comparison of worldviews. Now, me as a presuppositionalist, I have a thing in why I affirm Christianity being true, but the way to do so in establishing this is by examining worldviews, as Greg Bonson once put it. And so when it comes to these two worldviews, we put Christianity on one side, and then we put Satanism on the other. When it comes to the comparison between these two, what do you think makes Satanism stand out as unique and true in comparison?
And this is me trying to think of ways of describing what it goes through my brain of I guess whenever I used to be a Christian a long time ago, and I would pray for my family every day. I would pray for help during my times when I felt alone and bullied and scared and not sure of what to do, but I felt like I got nowhere with it. It didn't seem like it led me along a path that I really wanted to go because I got no answer. Well, I wouldn't say got no answers, but because you can't really get an answer for certain things. But I was young then. But
so
during
you
that time,
deal with the devil.
no, no.
I'm kidding.
No.
I'm kidding.
Boy.
Yes, I gave my soul, and here I am, ready to take over the world.
Does that mean you have epic rock and roll skills?
Oh goodness, no.
I have the pick of destiny, yes.
Oh, she just had to bring up one of her old favorite movies.
But during that time, I felt very lost, and I didn't know what to do. So I was an atheist for the longest time. I had no beliefs. I didn't believe there was any higher power. But then I looked into Satanism because one of my really good friends, she was a Satanist herself, and she's like, well, I'm just going to throw this out here to you. You look into it and you decide on what you feel you should do with it. Take whatever you get from it. And I was like, okay. So I looked into it and I was like, wow, this makes more sense to me than Christianity does. And I was in a Christian household, and I felt like I was forced more than anything to do something that I didn't believe in, and nor did I really want to anymore. And more times I was feeling more and more pushed. I was looked down upon because I didn't believe that there was such a thing. Many of my family members were like, oh, these people who believe in different religions, they're going to burn in hell anyway because they don't believe in God himself. And I felt that was unfair and cruel and horrible to think that way. But then when I went into Satanism and I looked into empowering of yourself and becoming something more than just a horrible person that tells others that they should be like them, and you have no individuality, and this is what I was raised into and what I saw. So I'm not saying that every Christian is a horrible person and you don't. Oh my God.
Oh no. I totally, honestly, I can relate to that. Back when I was in middle school, or up until I don't even know how old I was, I had to go to a Catholic school every week, and I didn't necessarily like all the things that my teachers were telling me to do. They were telling me to do certain things, which was not necessarily up to my presumptions, but yeah, I get it. I don't want to be forced to believe in something I might not believe in.
And that's the problem, I think, with some of the churches, and I was especially in that, not necessarily that I was actually forced into it, but that I felt that as someone who grows up in the Bible Belt, that sort of comes off as the cultural kind of thing, because we had been, from when growing up, and this is why I didn't even consider myself Christian until 2013. Back then, I would be what was called the default or name tag Christianity. That is, you wear the name Christian on, but then there's really no evidence of any fruit of the Spirit in your life. There is no evidence of that born again regeneration that is in you. These people act no different than the world itself, and that's what I think.
Right? Yeah, of course.
And that's what I think is the problem, because like usually the same people that are saying that are reading the Bible and saying that I'm a Christian and everything, and yet the next thing you know, they go to church on a Sunday, but then that same day they leave the church from the morning, and then they go to a strip club to start doing some cocaine and have fun with a hooker, possibly. These are scandals, unfortunately, that happen in real life, but you have people trying to justify the means of this, and others that are trying to say don't. Like, this is the worst one I hear often, is as soon as someone is doing a sin, and keep in mind what the Bible does say on it. Someone says, do not judge me. The Bible says not to judge. The Bible says do not judge within a certain likeness. In other words, do not make the judgment on someone in the sense of you are 100% for a certainty going to hell. And this even applies for saying someone's going to heaven necessarily by claiming the 100% certainty, because that is a knowledge only God has. But we can at least do what Jesus says, and that is judge righteously. We can only say, this is what this does, what this path will lead to, and hence lovingly ask and plead for the person to repent of the sins. And so that's why when you see me out street preaching, that's why you see me out in debates, when I engage in these things, I'm not trying to decide the fate of an individual because I have the all-foreknowing foreknowledge that resides with God as well. I am merely focusing on the knowledge that has been revealed through the Bible and through general revelation, and apply that. But overall, then, since we that's where it seems that the theme is that we share all together, is that one thing we don't like is this being forced into something, and I would agree. In fact, I wish that people would stop, even with how some people, because I remember there was this guy a while back, Max, of Red Pill Religion. He was saying that if his kids.
From Passion.
Oh dear.
Uh-oh. What was that?
Oh, no, sorry, nothing.
Silence all cell phones.
So, we're in a movie theater, folks.
Sorry
Remember what
about
they
that.
say.
But I
Oh,
guess, RC, I have to agree with you about that. Now, I wouldn't say I was necessarily forced
Right.
about that, but I did go to a Catholic school on every Sunday, and I just grew up with this, and that's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily see, this being evil. I think all of the lessons that I've learned from my teachers in Catholic school, like really helped me, in my relationship with God, right now. So I'm not really upset about what they did. Oh, God damn it.
131 new messages.
Did you just use the Lord's name as a profanity?
No, I just got another message. Ugh.
Well, I'm saying what you just said, though.
I was saying I'm very thankful that I did go to Catholic school. All right, that's all I'm saying. Oh, I have to turn off my phone. What is this nonsense?
But
Get out of here.
the thing that
All
just really, what I think might make, for my part of Satanism, stand out is the acceptance of others and in their beliefs, and then just telling them about what they are and that they should just look into it, and it is not forced upon how other religions would force themselves upon.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So then here's my question
course.
regarding that. So if that's the case, if we're to just do the research, not have it forced upon us, but to research the things ourselves, then let me ask this. Is there a possibility or a way that if anyone that you may come across were to offer something of Christianity that maybe that you haven't known about, because that was the way I viewed it at that point, and hence what led me to convert in 2013, was that I had a very false narrative of who Jesus was and how salvation even worked, because I merely went by what the tradition was and what people had been telling me this entire time, when I didn't even pick up a Bible and started reading. But by the time I was actually told about it, then I decided to research further the gospel message that I was told about, which is similar to what the people in Acts 17 were doing once they were hearing the word, and then they searched to test what he was saying through the scriptures. Then that's when I came to the truth. And so, is there a possibility or a way that in the future that you can see yourself in, that it's possible that you go from Satanism to Christianity based upon research, dialogue, into the particular topic?
Well, I have very much read the Bible from Old Testament to New, and I'm not going to say that I can quote it word for word or anything like that. And,
Same.
you know, I have read the Bible before. I've looked into many things in it. I've done my research, just how I have done with Satanism, and I wouldn't say I would go back. But I'm one of those that respect hearing, like, whenever we discussed all the time, whenever you bring up Christianity and whatnot, I always listen respectfully, and I, you know, like, go along with the discussion and everything. And I don't see that as a problem in me just sitting and listening, because that is your belief, and it is something that you go by. And it is not in me to judge others or anything, but I myself would not really go back into it, because I know what all it is about. It's just something that I personally don't want to follow into.
Understand. All right, so before I say this, everyone, the audience Q&A is open now, so if y'all got questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. Before we get to there, I just want to at least offer this, because, you know, there's people that have their ways of saying certain things, and I just want to ask if it would be all right if I at least, you know, explain what it is, what is the Christian gospel message, and if you will, this is the gospel according to RC apologist. If that would not make a eye-catching title, to be honest, if that was written on a book right there. I tell you that much, folks. So would you be open for that?
Repeat that. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Would it be okay if briefly I just gave an explanation of what it is, or what drives people like us passionate for these things? In other words, what is the gospel message for people, not according to the traditions by churches or by the cultural people, but what is the gospel that does not say trying to force somebody into this, or that, you know, you need to be doing these certain such things and be perfect.
Oh yes, of course. Go ahead.
So essentially the gospel, and this is the same thing I tell whenever I'm out in the streets preaching, is that in the beginning there was Adam and Eve. They were the first human beings, and they were able to do whatever they want except for eating of the forbidden fruit, and that was a command that was given by God. And after being tempted by the serpent, both Adam and Eve disobeyed God, and because of the act of disobedience, not necessarily from taking in the fruit, but the very fact that they disobeyed God, then inherits the sinful nature of humanity. And that's why the Bible says that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and that according to Paul and Psalms chapter 14, that there is not one who does good in the eyes of God. So by that standard, the person who tries to say be perfect or to be sinless or to be just like them is really no different at that point, because the Bible says that we are all equally sinners who deserve the wrath of God. Me, especially, I view that on myself. However, while that is the case, the Bible does talk about the Messiah that is to come, and he's been talked about in the Old Testament to be prophesied about, of a coming Messiah to redeem not just the sins of his people, the Israelites, but to redeem the sins of humanity. And hence why the Bible says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So Jesus, not just being a mere man, but being God incarnate, God manifested in the flesh, came down into this world, lived the sinless life that we couldn't accomplish, and yet was crucified on the cross for a crime he didn't commit. But he did so that through the shedding of the blood, through being crucified, that he would take the sin debt, if you will. It's much like this, like we had a speeding ticket that's like $50,000, and it's going to take a lot to pay it off. And then as you go to pay it, there's a stranger that says, "Excuse me, I would like to pay for this person's speeding ticket." Your whole thing is paid for, and someone else paid the fine. And that's how it works with the cross, is that not only did Jesus pay the sin debt and take our sins and paid for them on the cross, but that the righteousness that he had through his sinless life, not the ability to do sinlessness and complete perfection, but that the status of being righteous and good is placed on us through Christ by the faith that we have in him. Hence the Bible says, whoever believes is justified apart from works. Hence why it's not about doing a certain Sabbath laws or any of these other things, because even the Apostle Paul says if someone tries to say, do this one particular part, you may as well try to do the whole thing, and that is impossible to do. The fact is that we cannot please God by our works. The only thing that we can do is to come empty-handed and just accept him, accept what he has done on the cross. And hence, when we do that, we are seeing that we are made in the image of God. We have this reasoning that we can use. We are made unique. Every single individual is unique and has a purpose to serve in this life, and especially in the body of Christ. But the main thing is about why we talk about the issue of salvation, is that through what has been done on the cross, it has paid for sin, and so that the old saying goes in John 3:16, God loved the world in this way, that he gave his one and only Son, so that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So it is a cure, if you will, for an illness of death. And by putting our faith and trust in Christ, and that's all it really takes. It's not trying to do good deeds. It's not joining a specific denomination. It's not getting baptized, because as my pastor said, if you're just getting baptized and expect to get saved, you're doing nothing but just getting wet. So it's just by faith, and that the only thing that works do as a result is show the light that is in you and the sanctification. But ultimately, the heart of the gospel is we are not good, God is. And because God is good, and because he has that grace and mercy, he has sent his Son to pay our sin debt, so that through him we can be seen as good and be reconciled before God, not just for salvation, but to be in relationship. Hence why we are called children of God as a result. And that is the gospel message. So have you ever heard it described that way before, or some people try to say it in a different sense?
Kind of bits and pieces of like that.
Was there any particular part that was different than what you've heard?
Well, you did say a lot, so I can't go back and pick and to pick it out and be like, oh yeah, this part and this part. You're talking to someone whose attention just sometimes runs somewhere whenever I'm trying to listen very intently. But I can't necessarily pick and pick out what things were different and whatnot. So, but I will say that in itself is like the when you brought up oh God, why am I not Jesus dying for our sins, and that we should take that and be thankful for what he has done. I've heard that part, and I believe that is a beautiful way of being into Christianity and seeing someone who sacrificed so much and wanting human life itself to I guess be happy, if I'm reading that right.
Well, not necessarily to be happy, because while he did is going to desire that,
but to not to be able to ascend into heaven
and to reconcile us in our standing before God. Because right now, if let's say Jesus didn't die yet, we stand condemned and deserving of the wrath of God. But because of what has happened, we're at a point where we are having this moment of reconciliation because the debt has been paid, and that whoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life, because the righteousness of Christ, like I mentioned, him being sinless, that righteousness that he had, we call this the double imputation. He takes your standing of condemnation and sin, places it on him, takes his righteousness and perfection, and puts that onto you, so that by faith in Christ and through the blood of Christ that was shed on the cross, you are seen as righteous, because not what you did, but because of what he did on behalf of sinners.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, and this is going to be a really nerdy example of this, and while not too perfect, imagine that you are at a convention and you don't have a badge, and there's a voice actor that you're really wanting to see at his panel, but you can't enter because you don't have your badge thing. Someone walks by and gives you their badge, so that way you have that, who is able to go in to that panel room to see it, and someone had to give up something of theirs that would allow them for that, and gave it to you instead for that moment. So while not too much of a perfect analogy, the thought is still similar in the sense that you have a different status in that convention at that point to be able to enter into certain things. In the same way, by faith in Christ, because of what has been done on the cross, you have a different status and you are reconciled before God because of what the Son has done. Does that make a bit sense?
Yes. Sorry, I'm almost sneezing.
Bless you.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, you good. So, does that help out any? Does that make any sense there?
Oh yeah, no, it does.
All right. Well, thank you for allowing me to tell you that. And now we're going to get to the exciting part. I know you people in the audience are been curious to know about it, so we are now, and I see old V-Boy, old Vicosa, is in the chat. So, what's up, my homeboy? It's Vicosa. Yes, the scaly dragon with a nice, perfect voice. He does it better, but I digress. So if y'all want to ask questions, wow, we are getting like 7 more people, I guess, since some shows have ended. They're starting to flock over here. But yeah, if y'all have questions for our Satanist friend here, and mind you, again, Theistic Satanist, so isn't necessarily an atheistic one. So even if you might be a Satanist watching that have questions for the theistic side, well, there's the time to ask the questions. So feel free to go ahead and ask your questions. We're going to go ahead and see if we got...
and please realize I am not a professional in any sort of way or fashion.
Right.
I don't know everything,
It's not professional. Do not attempt to do the stunts you're about to witness. These were done by not professionals, and you're not a professional either, so don't attempt to do these stunts that we're about to be doing here, folks. Alright. Let's see if we got anyone making has any questions. I see like we got Willie Wyvern, but I am not so sure about what what these are on exactly, because I'm seeing questions like, ever heard of the word aeon or eon, which then I'm hearing like a bunch of other things like says why make it impossible, because this is what's crazy, because I can't tell if he's asking me or you with this, or he's just trying to have a conversation. So Willie, if you have questions for Skye, that's what we're looking for at the moment. So if you have questions for Skye, that's what we're opening up. So regarding, then we'll go straight to Vakoza, who has a question. Vakoza asks, what is your opinion on... Okay, he put 2 parts here, so I'm going to have to put my glasses. Well, okay, so what is your opinion on open sexuality? That is, the openness of being avidly sexual. So I think that's what he's referring to in that sense, is what is your opinion on the openness of being avidly sexual in society?
I think it's perfectly fine. We're all human and we have desires. Mm-hmm. So sexual attraction is one of them. And not to say every person, like, because you have asexuals who
like
just
myself
don't want to, and that's fine. But for people who are very sexual and out there, they, I believe, have every right to be that. And that, I say that it's perfectly fine. My views on it are just have fun, you know? Like, I have no judgment against them whatsoever. And I don't use terms like, oh, what a slut, or, oh, look at that whore over there. No, that's cruel and not right to say about somebody like that. Everyone has their right to do what they want, and being sexually active is one of them. And open in their sexuality is, by all means, okay.
Mm-hmm. And then this is where I would kind of interject in here on, is because, like, if I'm not mistaken, that was kind of in the book of Lucifer, particularly in the Satanic Bible. Although one of the things that is kind of there is that he says, while indeed be open about it, there are limits, such as don't do anything that is considered sort of like for the other partner, something that is non-consensual. Like, they'll say, completely be very open and allow yourself to do whatever you want sexually. But in terms of situations like rape or anything like that, don't do that unless it is the consent of somebody.
It must be consensual, because that is in the Satanic Bible, that one who is raped and the rapist shall be punished severely for the crime they have committed, because sexuality must be consensual. And rape is a big no-no in our views of these things.
Mm-hmm. And so then...
Hell, even pedophilia. Right. Sorry.
No, you're good. And that's where my question would be, because I would agree with on those particular things on, rape being wrong, pedophilia kind of being wrong there. And so the real question then becomes about morality on that, and what is the standard therefore? Because I was asking one atheist while I was in Arkansas, and he would say that morality or truth is subjective. That is personal, opinion-based, on the individual, versus objective, which is universal principle that exceeds opinion, meaning it's true regardless of what someone individual says. And so when he said that, I then asked, because he was saying it's wrong for me to tell people that they're wrong and to tell people that I'm right regarding Jesus, saying you should never tell anyone at all that someone's wrong and therefore you're right. Don't tell people like that. And so he said, don't force your ideas on them about what's right or wrong. And I said, so then is it right? What about rape then? Is it right or wrong on that regarding the rapist who himself thought it was right? And he said, yeah, to the rapist, that's not wrong. It's like, so that means we shouldn't lock him up by forcing our ideas on him and put him in jail, right? Of which he said, yeah, we shouldn't do that, but then quickly changed his answer. And there was a woman behind him that like gave a quick look like, the heck he say? And I'm like, boy, better watch your back. She might be following you later. But like, what are your thoughts on like when you make statements like that, make moral claims? Do you believe that the idea that rape or pedophilia, is it wrong on a objective standard or on a subjective standard?
When I stated that things shouldn't be like forced upon, it was more so of a, religious standpoint and, how to live a life standpoint. But things like rape and pedophilia are morally really, really wrong in every sort of way. And for me, that is something that should be judged because that is hurting another human being majorly. I guess my brain isn't clicking into the question very well right now, because when the topic of that comes up, it kind of brings a lot of really bad memories for myself in general.
No, you're it's fine. Like, totally right.
Let's change the thing to a different moral issue. Then let's talk about, instead of those things.
No, I mean I could talk about it. It's just
Okay.
sometimes I
don't want to make things uncomfortable for you.
Oh no, it's just it brings in a lot of thoughts, and it's. I can see how that is something that is a very good question, though, in general, of what the standpoint it is about it. And you were asking about what was it?
Is when you make the statements on this particular thing being wrong, are you saying that subjectively, which is based on the individual alone, it is wrong, or objectively, meaning it is wrong regardless of what some people may say, since some people will say, for me, it's not wrong for this?
And you were saying that it was universal.
Correct.
Objectively.
Correct. I would say that because God is the lawgiver and has established the law that he's placed on our hearts, like Romans 2:14-15 says, that we have this knowledge innately of a universal objective moral law that says that these certain things are wrong, and that it's true that it's wrong regardless of our opinions on it. Just like I can say that rape is wrong. Why? Because it is universally wrong and what it does and its harm towards people. But it's more than just simply because of my opinion. I can immediately say it is wrong versus, in my opinion, this is wrong.
Well, no, I mean, just in general, we all know that rape and pedophilia is absolutely.
But then you have the many who are like, oh, well, this person deserved it because of what they wore and how they look.
Yeah.
When many people who dress very normally, or even just wearing a long sweater and jeans, have just universally been raped or even put into situations where it's just not even rape but molestation. Either way is horrible in every sort of the way, every fashion. Oh my God. But objectively,
Just relax.
I think it would be more objectively if I'm choosing the right thing for that, because it should be known universally that it's wrong.
Right. And on that, we would certainly agree on there. All right.
Because that is ruining someone's life.
Oh, yeah.
And that is so, and I've been sexually assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's like, and it tore my whole life apart for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
And the many who don't have that kind of solace is just heartbreaking.
I can certainly agree with that. It's heartbreaking when some people don't have that comfort or that solace.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for telling us about that, Skye.
Sorry, I had to process the question a little bit better because my brain was confusing it very much so.
Girl, you are fine. You are fine. It's a discussion. It's not a debate. I'm not trying to use any gotcha things on you, girl. Just
gotcha. It's like, oh no.
or as an old foe on here once said often to me and others, gotcha, 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 gotcha. It's like a machine gun going off on that. Anyways, Frepic Videos asks, and I don't know if he's still in the chat, but he asked, oh great, I lost the question. Why do
I reject atheism?
Ah, I see. You can see the live chat too. Yes, that.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Why did I reject atheism? Well, if I'm correct, atheism is one who does not believe in anything. It's been a minute since I used to be atheist.
Right, because the term.
Why am I even
because the term
questioning this? Really?
Because the letter A is sort of like is the negative of the term theism, so therefore non-theism, non-belief in God.
I just had a nap earlier, and I'm still trying to wake up from it. Apparently, I turned away from that because there are, and this it scared me because I see another question that brings up supernatural things, which we'll get to that in a bit, because I have many things about that, but yeah, that's kind of one of the things is that I notice these energies and these beings, and whenever I started delving into just researching it really into the spiritual Satanism side of things, and I was like, that makes a lot more sense why these weird things happen to me constantly. So I was like, there has to be something more, because it was in the back of my mind whenever I was an atheist. I was like, there has to be something more. And then just out of nowhere, hey, look this thing up. Maybe you'd be interested in hell, whether you're in it or not. That's fine. I was like, okay, cool. Looked into it. I was like, oh my God, all these things make so much more sense as to the weird things that happen around me constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So yes, there's probably, I was like, man, there's more to it then. Wow, okay, that really fills in the pieces of this puzzle that I am living in life.
Right, so that would be why you reject atheism at that point?
I wouldn't reject it. Like, how you say reject for that, meaning like, oh, I don't believe that's a thing anymore, all atheists are wrong. Like, that's just how I see it whenever I hear reject, and I'm like, no.
I think what he's trying to say is like, no, because I'm not sure if he did hear the part where you were an atheist at one point, so I think regarding that, it may be implying like, in light of either the option of atheism, if given that, or when you were an atheist and then became something else, why would you reject it? And I think, like, turn away from it or not.
Oh, why I left it in general.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Well. There's definitely powers out there that cannot be explained, and even atheists, when they see such things or experience them, they can't necessarily find an explanation for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that was me. Like, this was during a time when I didn't understand much anyway. Yeah. So I sound super old.
Hey, trust me.
Okay,
wait till you see
boomer.
me. I
Uh-oh.
what?
What?
We've got the boomer word thrown out, and this ain't Left for Dead either.
What's that? Get off my lawn.
Oh, this has turned into a very fun and interesting stream that we've had in a while. Oh, but yes, and so I think your response there actually kind of answered another question someone asked, because John V was asking, have you ever experienced something supernatural in the context of your belief? And
okay. So yes, I have before, and some of them good and some of them bad. Remember when I mentioned things about spirits?
yes.
Spirits linger the world. Some of them have yet to move on, which because there might be certain attachments they have, or just in general have a certain negativity to them that just wants to really... Can I cuss on here?
Well, I've got away with it. We've had people that have come on here too that have cussed. So, I mean, it's your call.
They just like to fuck with people.
There you go.
Okay.
Because while
Yeah.
some Christians may have
sometimes
a
they
interesting
do.
thing on here, we go for the raw and pure things. Hence why we aren't afraid to deal with even the most biggest of some people. Not saying that Skye necessarily is like a very aggressive kind of thing, but you people get what I'm trying to say. I can't use words today, so.
Well, I have a kind of a long story to one of the bad sides of it, and but to the good side of it, I have had an interaction with a spirit, which was a little girl, and many questions that you want answered sometimes have to come through a pendulum, if you know what a pendulum is. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's
That's
been a while
very-
since I've heard that term, a pendulum. Let me look this up.
Pendulums
those things.
Pendulums are basically objects of communication with forces around,
Oh,
like
goodness.
spirits or even deities. And what they do is it's more of a thing to answer yes or no questions. And they're God, why can I not? I'm not gonna say, I wouldn't say power, because that's a dumb way of putting that, but I can't think of the other term for it. Their energy helps move the pendulum in a way that answers yes or no, depending on which way it swings. Like if you're swing whatever way for yes and swing whatever way for no. Well, I was talking with her and, asking of her age, if she was originally from here and other things. And it was just a nice, lighthearted thing. And it was very nice. And she was a sweet girl and don't know why she was stuck there. But you know what? It's something that happens. Now, the bad thing that brings up with supernatural things. Certain beings are not good,
Right.
and take over a body. I wouldn't say, well, yeah, I guess you could consider it possession, but one of my very spiritual wise friend of mine, very was able to, because we have things like astral projection and past life regressions and other things like that. Well, she was deep in meditation when something kind of just negative took over the room, and whatever was really influencing her ended up hurting me in the process. And you should never make deals with these beings, because that's what almost got me killed.
Yeah, I would also agree. Never make deals with the devil.
So we
It's
can,
not
we can
all that.
right, but she's saying not the devil. But either way, we could still agree. If it's a spirit that you are not familiar with, I think the common lesson we can all come to an agreement on is don't mess with the thing.
I
Yeah,
still.
Skye, I'm sorry. I actually had a question about. Have you ever played with an Ouija board?
Hold on,
I
real
have.
quick.
Hold on a sec.
I will answer that
I
though.
did once. It was a bad experience. Like,
I
it was
will
so
answer that though, but I from the experience with her being taken over, and it wasn't her, because sometimes they just go in without your consent, and it's scary.
Yeah.
It's a very extremely scary thing to deal with, and I still feel the razor blade on my arm from
Yeah.
the cuts that it left, and it was.
Exactly.
It hurt. I was scared for my life. I thought I was going to die that day.
Wow.
And that is one of the.
And you were just messing around with a pendulum.
No.
Mm-mm.
We were doing our regular meditation, cleansing of our spirits, auras, and whatnot, and
Oh,
just
so that
something
happened at a
something
different
did
time.
not feel right in the room, and it was
Right.
strong, and it was not happy with us, and so it took over one of my very close friends, and it just ended up being bad from there.
Oh goodness.
But Ouija boards, here's the thing, and a lot of people do not take this seriously. When you deal with communications of anything, you must treat that with respect of the highest degree. Because if you do not treat it with respect and you play it as a game, that's what pisses everything off. And then you're opening a gateway. Just like with Black Mirrors. Black Mirrors are very much gateways for letting horrible, bad things come into your home. Ouija boards are a way of communication with spirits and such.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do not treat that with respect and you do not go through the right precautions and other things to deal with that, you're just asking for an ass whooping at that point.
Unfortunately, yes, and you're right. There's a lot of stores out there that sell this as a game.
Yes, for children,
for a bunch
and
of
they
your
will
friends,
buy
like,
that, and they're like,
wow,
"Oh, this is fun and game, and
No,
we're gonna
no,
have
it's
a
not.
great time." And it's just like,
No.
"Oh, hey, now you have a really mean spirit or demon in your home. Way to go! You did not do it right. It is not a game. You do not play with that." And
It's not a game for sure. It's definitely some very dangerous stuff. I played with that back when I was in high school. Unfortunately, some very scary things went down.
And I will
I would not
stand.
recommend that.
I will stand my ground on that. I will tell you everything that you need to know as best that I can about using Ouijas.
Yeah.
Oh, me too.
But the thing
Absolutely.
is
Don't do it.
that you don't play with it. That's a lot of really big doors that you're opening to let in things that you shouldn't. I remember vividly one time bringing back my friend who is also a spiritual Satanist. She was like, "Hey, I'm going to make a Ouija board real quick. Give me a second. I need to ask some questions." So I was like, "Oh my god, what? Making one?" She's like,
oh no.
"Oh no, here,
That's a
just
mistake.
hear me out." And she did the precautions of saging, cleansing the area, making sure that she had the right things of communication. And then whenever she's done with it, she respectfully sends a goodbye and says that the conversation is over and ends it there.
That's what you're supposed to do. Yeah, exactly.
And it was just a piece of paper, so you could just destroy it. But
Right,
people
you're
who
supposed to
don't know how to properly close Ouija conversations
you're
end
supposed
up...
to say goodbye, as a respectful gesture.
So pretty
Yes.
much the people who do it wrong do it pretty much like every single idiotic horror movie character stereotype.
Exactly that.
Right? Oh,
It's like,
I
"Hey,
heard
Craig,
a
get the
noise
beer.
in
We're
that
gonna
dark
open up
hallway.
this Ouija board."
Let's go run into it. Idiots.
It's like
Every time.
and then next thing you know, they spill the beer or something like that.
Oh, somebody died in the basement? Let's go down there. Let's go look.
So
Also,
much can go wrong.
Like, what? What are you doing?
Well, oh wait, what were you gonna say, Skye?
Oh, if you've ever seen and I'm sorry, I'm going to be bringing up this movie. It's pretty just, but an example of how to not deal with a Ouija board. If you've ever seen the first Paranormal Activity movie, where the guy has the Ouija board and he leaves the planchette on top of the Ouija board, that is a no-no, because that is you opening the door for things to come in, and you leave it there, and then you're like, man, my house is a little chilly. I wonder why. I don't feel so good. Something doesn't seem right. I feel like I'm being watched. Weird. Must be nothing. And then, boom, you just unleashed all kinds of hell. Haha, coming from the state.
No, exactly, though. You're totally right. Oh, my God.
All right, so
they do that all the time.
And so we're gonna get to the thank you for all that. This has been like just one question opens up a lot that gets discussed about. And this is one of the reasons why we do these conversations.
That's why when it comes to questions that I can kind of understand better, I can actually like bring out my words better, because sometimes I will stutter if I don't understand much, and I'm trying to like process the question while also trying to answer the question without holding up time.
Yeah, and that's a good. Ow! Sorry, I just put the earbud in my ear and it just got and it just exploded. But anyways, thank you for that. We're gonna one comment that was addressed to the first one about the open sexuality thing. Vicosa just wanted to comment, and says that, quote, "I wish I could tell you my story on my own sexuality and my religion. I respect your view, but I wish you could understand this issue from my experience," to which he then says, "Just about my own experience with sexuality as a Catholic and raised openly straight and being part of the furry community." And I think that's pretty much what he was going with there. But the next question that comes from him and our lineup of questions is based on what you were saying earlier about your experience with the different spiritual beings. He asks, any interaction with the demon Zozo?
Yes. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I totally
laugh and cough at the same time.
Relate to this
I've heard the name, and I'm trying
have you ever had
to
any experience?
hold on.
Yeah.
I have to look him up because it's been a minute since I've heard the name Zozo. It's been years since I've heard Zozo's name.
Yeah, I can't even find a...
No. Like I said, I haven't heard that name in years.
Oh.
That's probably a good thing.
That it says...
No, it is a very good thing, because I know Zozo is not a good... not a good being.
Okay, according to the Villains Wiki, it says Zozo, otherwise known as the Ouija board demon, is the demon allegedly summoned through the use of Ouija boards and other forms of spiritual communication, like seances. And I think we kind of answered that question.
I mean,
in a way, yes, because like bringing up how to deal with the Ouija board itself. Oh, actually, funny enough, anything like when you're asking questions on a Ouija, like say who is there, even if they don't say anything specific on who they are, close it immediately. Immediately, because that is just something that's like, why should I tell you? Here's some things I can tell you though, and here's some questions I want to ask you. I want to get to know about you. Tell me everything about you. And that is the bait at the end of the hook.
Yeah, but like Zozo is crazy though. Sometimes like he knows some shit about you that like you never even said.
Oh yeah, no, that's the one thing about him. He is very powerful. Now, oh my God, I'm so glad that I never had any interactions with him whatsoever during my times of using Ouija boards. But oh my God, the things that I have read and heard, I do not want to deal with. But as soon as you see any negative, or if you feel any negativity, very powerful negativity, especially with Zozo, close it. Do not touch it. Don't burn. Oh, another thing, do not burn Ouija boards.
Yeah.
Like the actual...
No, never do that ever.
I know I brought up the paper one and destroying it, but she never burned it. She just tore it to pieces. But it was like a formal way, and it was just pre-made. It wasn't meant for actual permanent use.
Right.
Now, permanent use Ouija boards are a different story due to the fact that they are meant for permanent use, and you should never burn them because, oh my god, the things that come from them whenever you do, it is terrifying.
Back in the day during high school, I used to play around with the Ouija board, and a lot of crazy shit went down.
Yeah,
I can into detail about it unless you want to talk later. But oh goodness,
so
please do not do that.
So we got Vicosa then adding on to his question because he says he believes in the power of Ouija boards, but he also believes in the power of God though, and he says I have a Catholic Templar sword I had blessed by a priest. So here comes the question then from the spiritual theistic Satanist. So the question for you is, do you think that blessed Catholic Templar sword would affect the protection, or not? Do you think that the Ouija board would affect the protection that the Catholic Templar sword that's been blessed by a priest provides? Do you think that would have some kind of effect on it?
On the entity itself?
Like
on the sword.
Right, on the sword. Like if it was going to be...
If the entity itself is affecting that sword in particular?
Right, like regarding the protection it can provide. Like if, say, the Ouija board started showing off some of that vibe that you were talking about, would the sword be able to protect, or would the board or the powers thereof have some kind of effect negatively or positively for the sword?
Yes and no.
Ooh.
It depends on the being itself, meaning the power that it brings. Now, many like lesser evil beings, like asshole spirits, yes, that will not affect the sword in any sort of way or fashion, but demonic presences, that's a different story, due to the fact that it will very likely piss them off more than anything.
Yeah, I'm actually like wondering what his question is. Like, does he mean if a blessed sword is available, you can just
he has one.
Bash the Ouija board.
He has one, I guess, and that would be an interesting question. And who knows? Maybe he'll help clarify that for us.
I'm
in the
not
chat.
really sure what he means by like a blessed sword.
Because I guess if it's like more of, oh wait, no, I think I get it. The sword itself is like a protection because it was blessed by a priest.
Yeah.
Now, whatever if he were to communicate through a Ouija board, is necessarily, well, not necessarily. What am I talking about? If it's of a bad aura or spirit itself, would that sword still protect him, or would it not? Also, yes, it's a big depending. That's a big if, really.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, well, think about holy water. Like, that's also blessed by a priest, and that's used on,
But the power itself, on if you put enough power into something, it's a coin toss on whether it does protect you or not. Like I have beads blessed by a monk, and
right.
Not even that can keep away certain entities that I come across or they come to me.
Right.
Like these beads themselves were blessed by a monk, but even so, that does not stop certain things from coming over and being like, hey, I'm gonna fuck with you for a bit.
Oh, unfortunately, no, it might not, but it might, prevent certain entities.
Certain entities, yes, but not all. So,
right,
yeah.
And so he says, so he's saying in response to what we've been talking about so far is, and of course, like I have my views on the whole thing, but I'm keeping silent on it for the moment. But Bakoza is saying, quote, I honestly believe that any demon would flee in fear of the sword if anyone would be using a Ouija board in my vicinity, and my own self-conviction on how my own sins affect me and my own belief in, I guess he had to, because it does limit on how much you can type in the chat, affect my own belief in my salvation in Christ.
Wait,
so
might I just say, if I had a blessed sword, I would feel pretty darn invulnerable.
Who wouldn't? I mean, you have a sword,
real,
a
like,
Templar
right?
sword.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you
Come
might
on
be
now.
you might feel like the bad guys from the Assassin's Creed games. But I digress.
If my sword was blessed by a priest, I'd be like, yo, screw off, demons. I got you.
There you
But
go.
also, you could be pissing them off, and it would just make things 10 times worse.
Which is why I go
Yeah,
for the
but, like,
safe
I
option,
got a
and
sword, though.
which is why I go for the safe option and just ignore both entirely. But
Hell, sometimes you can't even ignore what the presence brings,
Yeah.
and it's a very scary experience.
Tell that to my blessed sword.
Well,
why don't you?
we're gonna have a battle back and forth. But my sword is awesome, and then it's like, don't mess with them demon spirits. I tell you that. But then we got to regarding this talk about the spiritual stuff. John V in the chat is saying, amazing stories. I struggle with deciding if these things, because I'm assuming he's saying that he hasn't had these experiences in his own life. If these things are true or just the product of suggestion and the unconscious. Any advice how can I know for sure, or how I can know for sure in a safe way?
There are ways of knowing, kind of, but you have to actually put forth the work into it. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to do it this one time, and if it doesn't happen, then it's not real. It is you have to work into it. You can't do a one and done.
Mm-hmm.
So meditation is a good way of doing certain things. Now, don't just be like, oh, I'm going to jump right into astral projection and then go around and see. No, that's a one-way ticket of getting yourself really, really, really fucked over. Because that leaves your body vulnerable to things that can affect you in turn. But meditation and asking questions the safe way with pendulums, even tarot or runes can be a good way of asking questions and not going to a Ouija board that unlocks hell itself. Haha.
Haha.
But jokes aside, the best way of trying to get your answers is through easy, I wouldn't say easy, but safer ways of doing it is meditation, pendulums, and tarot readings, if possible. You don't even have to do tarot readings. The easiest thing that you can to get questions answered is a pendulum, but it's only for yes and no questions. But whenever things happen around you in general, you have to be wary of what could be around you. Like brought up before, the negative entities and demons themselves are something you should be aware around you. So cleansing yourself, cleansing your home, like with sage, which I use a lot. A protection circle. You can look up many ways of protecting yourself and how you should prepare yourself for certain situations. And after all of that, you will be tired because that takes a lot of energy and a lot of concentration and to do certain things like that. Whenever I read tarot cards for people, and that's putting so much energy that even I'm just like, okay, I can't do anymore because I'm at my limit of what I can and can't do right now. in answering your questions of what you want answered, in a sense. But also when it comes to tarot cards, if you go into that, you have to be specific. You can't be vague. You have to be specific and only deal with one question. If you have multiple questions running through your head, it's going to go with the one that bothers you most, or one that your brain is like, or what your spirit itself is wanting more answered than anything. And whatever question you were like, oh, you know what, I'll go with this question, won't be answered, and you'll be confused the whole time. Which I've had happen many times before for myself when I want questions answered, and I'm like, wait, this isn't what I asked. What is all this mess? Oh, wait a minute. I know what it answered for me. You're dumb. Thank you.
Just straight up just says, you're dumb. Thank you. Okay.
Yep, that's it. Game over. Whatever.
Game over, man!
Or get your life straight. Ah, got it. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, there you go. So...
It will shout in your face many times with those kind of things.
Right, of course.
There you go. All right, so we're going to get to our last question. But before we do that, we have John V, who asked, and for some reason I saw that as soon as this was going to be starting to come to a close, some people are going to be interested. And thus brings the question, thanks for your answers, guys. Is Skye on Twitter to follow? You never know. You were going to get started up on a following and become your own personality because of this.
Don't depend on me for anything. My Twitter's mostly lewd things. So.
Oh, God. That's where you know. Just say, it's got lewd. I'm not touching that with a 100-foot pole. My asexual butt's going the other way.
Well, as a Satanist yourself, I'm not necessarily surprised. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing that. All right.
I do have a Twitter. It's just I don't use it very much. I'm more of on Instagram or DeviantArt or Facebook.
And good old Facebook.
Well, fair enough.
And there is one person named Skye on there, but it's definitely a lot famous. And I love the outfit. I just sent Skye the image of who I'm talking about, and old Abe might know who I'm talking about as well, since he's been involved in the fandom. Skye,
oh yes,
Skye,
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, Skye Cabot.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, the good old adorable species that is a cabot. Part cat, part
all of that.
Rat.
That's adorable.
What I think it is, anyways. But yes, so that
I did have one last question for you.
Well, before you get there,
last question.
Well, all right, all right. You know what? You go first, then we get to Vakoza, because he will be the last question that we got for the show.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Let's go to Vakoza. What's up, Vakoza?
All right, so and it seems Vakoza also met that particular Skye, the Cabot. He says, I heard that salt and sage were protections against evil forces, but I've heard the only roots of that were Native American tribes using it for nightmares. Any clarification on that?
I
have no idea.
I don't have much clarification on that. All I had known was that, I never looked into the where it came from. All I knew was that it was protections and stuff. For nightmares, it also does help for that as well, since many beings can give nightmares and fear into your heart and whatnot because of what it knows about you and what things you're afraid of. So those do help with nightmares. I've had many good dreams after saging my home. And you know, oh my god, my brain, why are you I've had less nightmares from saging my home after saging my home. And salt is more of a protection than it is, I feel, than just, you know, getting rid of nightmares. But salt and sage are protections in itself. But I've never looked into where it originated from. But if it did come from that, then that's really cool. That's something I've never heard of, and I'm glad I know something now. One of the things that I do know that were meant for nightmares as well was dream catchers. And funny enough, with dream catchers, people who have tattoos of dream catchers are kind of dumb.
I was just about to ask about dream catchers. Oh, I'm so glad you brought it up.
Due to the fact that dream catchers are meant to pull in negativity, like bad dreams and such other things, and keep it away. But with people who have dream catchers on their body, they're bringing in those negative forces and such into their own body.
Right.
And only causing more harm to themselves than anything. But you shouldn't have any kind of Native American symbolism on your body anyway, because that's just disrespectful.
Yeah. All right. So.
Well, I don't really care about political correctness, but I thought it was very interesting that you brought up dream catchers.
So before you get to your question, because I do have to use the restroom real quick, and I will let you use that opportunity to ask and interact while I do that and then return. And because I just wanted to make one comment on the answer there. It says, just sort of surprised that more people would put more faith into the random sages and leaves and not, and of course understanding him, and not in the word of God. My mom used to buy us dream catchers, so he's had his experience with the dream catchers as well. So speaking of that, so Ave, I'll be right back, but please feel free to ask her a question while I depart briefly and then return immediately. Hey, that's a rhyme right there. There's a rap.
Go tinkle your winkle, boy.
Dropping some bars.
Drop little TMI, but all right.
Oh, you'll live.
A little bit, whatever. So yeah, Skye. My last question that I really wanted to ask, just kind of sum up the whole thing. Where do you think you're gonna go when you die? Are you gonna go to heaven or hell? Like, what do you think happens when you die?
For me, I believe in past lives. And those past lives are experiences and lessons that we have learned during that time that we had lived and then died and come again to try and learn from the mistakes we did in our past.
Right. So you think you're going to be reincarnated? Like there is no heaven or hell? Like there's no...
I believe that there is a end stage to it all, but that's if your soul wishes to ascend instead of going back. And yes, there are spirits that do linger because they don't know where to go. If a question like that comes up about spirits and like, well, why are spirits around? Don't they want to? It just really depends on the spirit and what connects them here to the world.
Right, but like, do you think that there is some kind of eternal happiness or some kind of eternal torture in hell?
I wouldn't be able to answer that, really. I wouldn't know. I could ask, but
because like I believe that there is. I do think that unfortunately some spirits do linger in the world of purgatory, and they can some kind of interact with people who are out and about. That's why we have haunted houses. But no,
yeah.
So seriously, like I think heaven and hell do exist. Evil people, like.
Yeah, no.
Rapists and all that stuff, like they end up in hell. But people who are genuinely good people, I think they end up in heaven. So I was just wondering, like, what your particular, like, what your stake on that was.
I feel, and like I said, like there is for me reincarnation and whatnot, and learning from past lives and whatnot. But I think there is. And I would hope there is a place for us to go whenever we do want to ascend. And may you call it heaven or may you call it hell,
Right, right, yeah. Of
Because
course.
there should be, I would say, places for those to go because, where else are they going to go? They can't stay on Earth forever.
I I know, but you and I definitely agree on the concept of an afterlife.
Yes.
Right, like when we die, from this world, we're gonna go somewhere else.
Mhm.
And what
If we
is that
choose to.
somewhere else gonna be?
Yeah.
Like what's it gonna be like?
Yeah.
So are we going to choose to like haunt some abandoned castle or whatever? Or like what's gonna happen? Like,
Where will we go? Let's spin the wheel.
I would love to see my dead family members in heaven. That would be amazing. But then, does time really matter at that point? I don't know. Or if you're like a ghost, haunting some random building in like Budapest or whatever, like what are you gonna do?
Well, I feel like those that still linger are those that think they can still accomplish what they can in that state.
Yes, I agree. I think it's very difficult to do so, and that's
But
why
they can't
I
do
mentioned-
that because the only way they can is if they finally ascend and decide whether they want to go back or go where they are going to be placed. Because there is a redeeming yourself sort of aspect to it.
Yes, there definitely is. Especially those who are stuck in purgatory, who want to ascend to heaven and see their family members. They want to, do good as much as they possibly can, even if they're dead. Maybe they can still fulfill those, obligations. I guess that's probably why we have ghosts in the world. That they're just still lurking around, certain places. They're trying to, fulfill their duties.
Mm-hmm. But then they can't because they have no physical way of doing it. And I believe that's what causes... I think that's what really mostly causes a lot of frustration, though, for certain spirits. And causes them to just be foul and angry and wanting to cause more harm than good.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. That is a very good point.
Because
like, hell, I would be.
Like,
right?
like in quarantine right now, we're like the negative spirits who are just stuck there. We're like, we can't go anywhere. It's angering me. I'm frustrated. What do I do? What am I supposed to do?
There's always
I'm going insane.
I know, exactly. And then let's say if someone used a Ouija board to like talk to me, I'd be like, yeah, I'm kind of pissed off. I can't do what I wanted to do.
And I'm gonna put it out on you.
Wow, I just found an angry spirit. But I'm like, actually, though, that's how it is. We're all humans here. Like, let's get real.
But we can at least understand one thing. That the main thing that would help out the lonely or the tortured wandering spirit would be one thing if we use that analogy. Mm-hmm. Netflix.
Oh my god.
You saw it was coming. You saw it coming.
Oh my god.
There you go. But anyways, we have reached up our time on here, folks. We have gotten through the 2 hours. We thank you all for your questions that you've asked, and we thank Skye for being on here. Which, by the way, folks, remember, said she was nervous earlier, but if you ask me, you did pretty well. Like, you knew how to speak on some of the stuff. If you did, you were honest on it, and what you did know, you were fluent on it. So I mean, you discredit yourself more than you even need to. Like, you need to just give yourself some more credit here when it comes to your speaking skills. Because I know.
Nah, it's fine. Skye is totally incredible.
Absolutely very incredible. If you say otherwise, then that means you have a problem with me, and I suggest you better let that one marinate.
Like a steak.
Like a steak.
Yeah, fake news.
Oh, good gracious! You say fake news, and then I'm like, everybody, please do not be dissing on Skye. She is the greatest. She's like one of the best that's out
Please
there.
do not put Donald Trump's voice and my name together. No.
Huge.
Don't worry. We already have the orange doggo in the chat here with us.
Yes.
Orange and yellow isn't yellow like slightly orange anyway, or
I don't know. Orange
Now we're
polka
gone
dots,
to a
that's all we know. Whatever.
philosophical debate about color. Why? There's so
Because
much going
orange
on.
is bad, obviously.
So someone,
Yeah,
Zachary earlier in the chat had asked, "Have we gone it crazy because of how insane I was?" Trust me, you didn't see me earlier with Ave when it was just me and Ave in here off air. That was crazy itself. Because at that point, and this is probably where my neighbors are going to be kind of wondering what's going on, because I was doing things like like that.
Alright, yeah, it was pretty crazy, my buddy.
Indeed.
It was pretty crazy.
Oh yeah.
Jeez. Good
Yeah.
thing I wasn't in that little loony bin for that moment.
Well, you're in it now for the moment, but don't worry, we're about to wrap things up. But before we do so, we do want to make sure we end this on a good note. So, Skye, is there any because the main purpose of this, of course, is not necessarily because, as you know, as a Christian, I would affirm that Christianity is the objective universal truth over other religions. But in terms of some people that may have misconceptions about Satanists and Satanism, even if they affirm that they are going after the people that believe in the supernatural aspect, the theistic side, what would be, let's say you're walking down the street, you're going to go see the new season of Ruby or the next season of Beastars at the movie theater. Why? Because for some reason it's playing at a movie theater at this point.
I would love to see Beastars in theaters,
There
honestly.
you go. But let's say you're going there and all of a sudden you meet someone who's trying to start up a conversation and share the gospel with you, but they may have some ideas about Satanism. What would you suggest be something that they should understand from your perspective, and what ultimately do you think, from your perspective, help out the evangelists at that point when trying to share the gospel and convert people to Christ? What would you suggest be when it comes to the audience that is you as the Theistic Satanist? What would you think help the evangelists reach to your particular audience, if that makes sense?
Huh. Are you meaning like in a sense of how would I explain to them that I am not one to be a part of that, but I see that as respect and I show my side of it?
Well, like in the sense that if they do want to convert people, if they're not by force but by sharing the gospel,
Yes.
they're going to have that conversation. But how should they go about doing so with a Theistic Satanist so as to not
Ruffle feathers.
misrepresent ideas, all that? How should one, what would be your suggestion for them if they were to engage with people like yourself?
Well, if it's brought up, like, say, because I've had one, and I'll use this as an example. I had one man come up to me at a bar and say, "Would you like to learn about the ways of Jesus Christ and everything?" And I was saying, "Oh, well, no, thank you, but I do appreciate you coming up to me and asking." And he asked me why, like in a nice way. Like if you're asking why, like, "Oh, why would you prefer not to?" And I would say, "Oh, well, I'm a spiritual Satanist." And he brings up like, "Oh, okay. Well, what brought you into that light? And why did you get into this sort of thing?" And like how I explained throughout this whole entire session, like this is how I came about it, and this is what I believe in. It's more of, if you're gonna try and talk to someone like me, make it respectful. Like talk to them like a normal person, I guess, if that's the right way of answering that question. And less judgment on what they believe. And sometimes for certain Satanists, and I'm not saying that for myself, I've had many that have been very, I guess, offended whenever they hear, "I'll pray for you." So be very careful on that statement, because many of them are like, I would prefer you not to say that to me. Now, for me, I'm like, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate your kindness and please have a good day. But for some, they don't really want to hear that. Not all. Not all.
Well, I think most normal people would, aside from the offended, alt leftists. But
Oh boy, here we go again with that comment.
never mind. Yeah, that's just it.
So well, thank you for that, by the way.
Uh-huh.
So that and
I hope that answered that question, though.
and it did, and hopefully some people can use that response to learn a bit and how to engage with certain people. Because we will come to several people in the streets, and I've certainly had my fair share of them. Though I wouldn't count the people that have told me to kill myself, but that says the point.
But if you do wish to state that you want to pray for them, all you have to do, and this should just be simple as that, because some people don't appreciate it when they're like, oh, I'll pray for you. Be like, are you okay with me praying for you? And if they say no, then just be like, oh, okay. Then I respect your decision, and then walk away.
Right.
If they say yes, then there you go. You have your permission. It's a consent thing. Because many can be a little iffy towards that, or some are like me who are like, oh, yeah, okay, sure. Go ahead.
There you go.
Because I won't deny your kindness. Your kindness is something that I appreciate.
And that is why we do it. It's an act of kindness. So, yes, thank you for that response there, and hopefully for the people that have been listening in so far, and then, because this is more than just the live broadcast, this is going to be for afterwards too, so in case someone wasn't able to make it for Thursday, hopefully y'all likewise consider what was just said here. If y'all do encounter someone who identifies as a Satanist, or just in general, whenever you are talking to them, this is things I keep in mind whenever I'm engaging in conversations with some people. And the same thing with the prayer thing. I sometimes ask if it's okay with you, could I pray for you? And majority of the times I hear yes, and if they say no, then at that point I realize don't prod further or anything like that. At that point, if I'm going to, I'll at least do that in my later time, when I'm at home and in privacy. That's
that's because that's your realm. That's where you would prefer.
Right, exactly.
But then also the aspect of asking, that's a respect thing.
Right. And that's what we should be trying to do, at least when we engage in conversations, being respectful. And
that is also for the other side of Satanists. Do not be disrespectful when somebody says, can I pray for you? Be like, I don't need your prayers, because you're just being an asshole. Just pointing that out.
Well, there you go. There's some advice for the Satanists as well. If anyone, because I don't know, like I said, Satanism is a very rare thing, so who knows? Maybe they might watch this one after this, and we'll see what happens. So, I'll keep you informed if we do get a comment from a Satanist on that one. But thank you for that. Again, like I said before, and I'll say it again, that is good advice, and for both sides. I quoted Trump without knowing so, but I did it without the voice, so that counts. That being said, thank you for that. Before we play the outro music and clog out, is there anything you want to say for the audience, real quickly?
Well, absolutely. Well, I mean, for the audience, of course, I think we've already, discussed your questions, but I'd just like to make a big shout out to Skye. Thank you so much for being on. This is a very fascinating conversation. I honestly, I learned a lot, and I hope that the audience did as well. And I just hope that everyone has a great night, and God bless.
Absolutely. So, and Skye, I forgot to mention this before we do the show. Whenever we do this thing, it's much like the same thing we did with the opening, where just ask that mute your mic until I say that we're off air, as I play the outro music and say the goodbye. But let me get ready to get that music ready so I can go ahead and say that goodbye, and then and then I'll let y'all know to unmute your mics whenever we are off air. So let me go ahead and get that music playing, so that way I can say my message real quickly and then announce the possible plans for next Thursday. So let's go ahead and... Oh, is the volume going to be there loudly? Okay, no, it's not too loud. That's nice. Y'all folks in the audience, can y'all hear that music? Oh, yeah, that's going to be very awesome. Okay, not sounding too creepy. Okay, so we just want to keep in mind that the point of the conversation was not an ecumenical, like, kumbaya kind of thing. The point of this is to learn, to discuss. Y'all saw we had disagreements, and we were slightly having something that could be considered an informal debate in a way. But that doesn't mean, therefore, be a jerk. Therefore, say, just straight up the old-fashioned Southern way of saying, "You're going to hell," or anything like that. The whole point of being a Christian is not just simply saying the name of Christ, is to also display the fruits of the Spirit, which include gentleness and kindness, according to Galatians 5. If we can show that respect, if we can show that to people, then we show the light of Christ and show what he has done in our life, and that itself is also a testimony, besides the testimony in the gospel that we preach by mouth. So keep that in mind, folks, when you engage in witnessing. So I want to thank y'all for tuning in, and also be sure to tune in tomorrow. We don't know what exactly will be the plans on how we discuss it, but we will of course be going over, if y'all saw the one video I did, the recent Tony Spell controversy that has been brewing in the state of Louisiana. Will we have a member of the church to come on and talk about that? Will we have Tony Spell himself on? Or will we just be me and Ave rambling on like madmen? Who knows what'll happen, but until then, this is RC Apologist. Y'all take care.